Is this the real Johnny Silverhand? If Johnny's memories have been altered, corrupted, and fabricated, is this actually him? If his engram was damaged and incomplete, can this be the real Johnny? Or is the real Johnny actually alive? And is Alt in possession of his body? Let's break down these theories and what it could mean for Orion. First off, we know Johnny is an unreliable narrator, as said by Mike Pondsmith himself. Johnny's recollection of the events that day are scrambled from the rad damage his body took and the process of recording his engram. CDPR and I have both agreed that Johnny is an unreliable narrator at best. We also know at the end of the mission with Jackie, he says that the relic is roughly only 86% intact at this point, and we don't know how much further it deteriorated between being plugged into Jackie, removed from Jackie, and then implanted into V. And we also know that Cyberpunk Red and 2020 are still canon, and these are what make Johnny an unreliable narrator, and contradict several things he tells you and the memories that V sees. And Alt confirms this by saying this to V.
What you saw was his subjective view of what happened, a warped account of events he locked away in his subconscious and replayed time and again. It bears no resemblance to the truth.
So if the story from Never Fade Away is canon and is from third person and not a biased first person perspective, like Johnny's memories are, then there are several changes in Johnny's mind that are extremely different from the actual events of what happened. And before I talk about the differences in these stories to Johnny's memories, I want to point out that during Alt's recollection of the events in Never Fade Away, it says, the original Soul Killer started as a matrix to contain artificial personalities. She'd studied the concept, worked out the parameters for creating a storage matrix. She'd been fascinated and awed to discover that the same matrix could contain living engrams, transfer them from computer to body, and even back again. It was immortality. In the same story, there's a samurai song that Johnny is also singing, and the lyrics are kind of suspicious and ominous, foreshadowing of what happens to Johnny. Specifically, the lyrics that say, "My soul inserted with vital force. Can't kill me, I'm zeros and ones." It feels intentional to put a song where Johnny is singing about how his soul was inserted with force and then how he can't die because he's code, in a story leading up to how his soul was inserted into an engram as he is in the process of dying, and essentially becomes immortal. Coincidence? I think not. These stories really reveal a lot and show how much of an unreliable narrator Johnny truly is. Aside from small details and conversations being different than Never Fade Away's recount of the events, there are some major changes to Johnny's version. First, Johnny reframes the entire situation as being about him. He reframes himself as the leader of this mission, and Arasaka's #1 enemy, when in truth, Smasher didn't even care about Johnny, and the true leader behind everything was Morgan Blackhand. Johnny wasn't even in the main infiltration team. He was on the third team, Alpha, to work as a distraction. Obviously, this is very different from the version in the game that paints Johnny as Smasher's rival and important enough to be interrogated by the actual Saburo Arasaka, when in fact he was never actually interrogated, and this entire portion has been fabricated. And what's interesting is that Adam takes out Johnny relatively easily, and this is where Johnny dies. Yet his memories continue. They glitch and suddenly he's on the rooftop. But in Never Fade Away, Johnny never actually makes it to the roof. He was never even around to recount this portion of the memories. It was Morgan Blackhand and Smasher who had their fight on the rooftop, not Johnny. He also reframes himself as being taken down by Smasher in their second confrontation, and Smasher rips Johnny in half with his shotgun in their first encounter. And this allows Shaitan to help immobilize Smasher, allowing the crew to get away. Johnny intentionally served as a distraction to help the rest of his team, and Smasher instantly killed him. It's in the same story from Shockwave that Johnny's team declares him dead from this sacrifice. Another inconsistency involves Shaitan. In 2077, he dies in the helicopter before Johnny takes over the gun. But in truth, Shaitan is why Smasher was immobilized, and this fight is what allows his team to escape. Johnny was also not behind the bomb. It's implied Blackhand had the bomb, as he is mentioned carrying a black bag, and Team Alpha was in the labs trying to download Alt. And this is confirmed by Pondsmith, who says that the bomb was detonated by someone in the assault, but the actual person is unknown. Again, more inconsistencies, and Pondsmith confirming once again that Johnny's memories are inaccurate. And once again, the game leans towards the sourcebooks being accurate over Johnny. We also see the events of Johnny actually finding Alt, and in the Never Fade Away story, Alt is already in the process of saving herself and had begun killing her captors. But because of the explosions Johnny caused, this causes her connection with the cyberdeck to break. She was unable to return to her body because of this, meaning that essentially, Johnny is the reason she became stuck in the net, and why her connection with her body was severed. This is clearly different than the version we see in-game, where Johnny shoots Toshiro and unplugs Alt himself. And when Johnny does meet Alt again, she reminds him that he is the reason that she's dead.
It is not. The Alt Cunningham you strove to save in Arasaka Tower no longer exists. This should be obvious to you, as you were responsible for her death.
Maybe he's reframed this as her already being dead before he gets there. Maybe he's letting himself take the blame for unplugging her. And that's why we see the following scene with Thompson. And while it does seem like there are two options when it comes to handling Thompson in Johnny's memories, no matter what option you choose, Johnny still beats the shit out of him for recording Alt. You cannot prevent his memory from choosing this option, which is interesting because this doesn't happen at all in the Never Fade Away story. This could be interpreted as Johnny's subconscious being upset with Thompson to begin with. Because prior to this, in the Never Fade Away story, we find out that Thompson watched Alt and Johnny get jumped, and then watched as Alt was abducted, and that he was also already following Alt because of her net-running abilities. You can also say that this is Johnny's cyberpsychosis coming out, as he attributes his psychosis as the hand taking over, which is what looked like happened here. Does that mean everything that happened pushes him further into psychosis, since Pondsmith did confirm that Johnny is indeed a cyberpsycho? But if that's the case, then why didn't Johnny punch Thompson in the Never Fade Away story? This means that the hand never took over originally, but maybe with his descent into Soulkiller and Mikoshi, his anger and psychosis continued to manifest, especially against Thompson. In the conversation prior to finding Alt, we also learned that Thompson was the one who told Johnny about Arasaka, and that they were the one behind Alt's abduction. Meanwhile, in Johnny's memories, he is the one who pinpoints Arasaka as being behind it. This reframes Johnny's obsession with Arasaka. As in Never Fade Away, he wasn't the one behind the mission or the one hell-bent on destroying Arasaka. Additionally, Johnny specifically tells V that he didn't work with Thompson again, except we hear Thompson on comms with Rogue during Love Like Fire, which takes place after Alt's death, so they were clearly still working together. There is a lot of inconsistencies, and if Never Fade Away is canon over Johnny's stories, Alt's comments about Johnny's interpretations of the events are correct. Johnny's memories are inaccurate and fabricated. And from the Cyberpunk Red story Black Dog, we know that this story heavily implies that Alt, possibly known as Angel in this story, is the one in possession of Johnny's actual body, following his death after the Arasaka explosion. And Mike Pondsmith did confirm that this story is in fact about Johnny's body. So if this is the case, then she would have been able to enter the Black Wall and essentially move her consciousness, thanks to her own programming, and she would have been able to move it to a new body, and would be able to recreate this process for Johnny. Like she said, Soulkiller had created immortality. We also never see proof of Johnny's body. Even when we visit the landfill, there's no marker for Johnny's body. And if you haven't read Black Dog, they say a silver fangirlie found Johnny's body and put it on ice. The fangirl turned out to be Samantha Stevens. She accompanied the group in the Black Dog story called the Cyber Six. Together with the Cyber Six, they transported the crate with Johnny's body to New Mexico. The team suspected it was a nuke, because of its radioactive warning on the case. But at this point, it was Johnny inside, not a bomb. Thinking they are transporting a bomb, the team does eventually make it to its destination, and they arrive at a lab in Los Alamos, where the case is picked up by a woman named Angel. At the end of the transfer, Angel opens the case, tenderly looks down at the body on ice, and whispers, "Hello, my love." And Pondsmith did confirm that this is in fact Johnny's body, and Angel looks extremely similar to the alt we see in Johnny's memories, including her cybernetic arm, but her features and hair color look exactly the same. And who else would say "hello, my love" to Johnny? And the Cyber 6 team thought they were delivering a bomb to a lab that could specifically dismantle it, and they believed it's Angel who was going to do this. And she actually has something very interesting to say about this. Can't think of a better place to disarm a lost atomic warhead than a place that makes them. And obviously, this isn't a bomb in the case, it's Johnny. So is she referring to herself making Soulkiller and being behind immortality? If so, then this sentence obviously has a double meaning. So is this where the real Johnny is? Did Alt find a way to clone a body or rebuild one for herself? She is the mastermind behind Soulkiller and said she had created immortality. Of course, she would take advantage of her own creation. And obviously, we know that Alt existed in some form, since we know she contacted Johnny after her connection with her body was severed, and she died while Johnny was trying to rescue her. And her activity didn't stop there. She became a powerful entity on the net and lived on after her death. Additionally, Spider-Murphy takes Alt and scatters her all over the net in hopes of retrieving her someday. Could Alt have rebuilt her consciousness after successfully being able to navigate the black wall, and then rebuilt her consciousness as a whole and put her body in someone else's body? And could she have given Johnny Silverhand immortality as well? Either way, this is the last known official location of Johnny's body, and this is in 2038. And this is why there was no marker when we go to look for his body in 2077. And Samantha Stevens is why we find Johnny's Porsche and gun in 2077, which again points the source material as canon over Johnny's memories. Stevens found Johnny's body in a wrecked bunker in the ruins of the towers. She also found an unexploded Arasaka device and realized the danger of what she found. She then unloaded it into the Del Coronado Bay and then hid Johnny's body in its nuke crate to preserve him. Decades passed after Stevens' discovery, and during this time she took care of Johnny's body, his car, and his gun. And interestingly enough, it was Angel who asked Stevens to go to the hot zone and access the bunkers, and that's where she found Johnny's body. Later, she would die from cancer from her time in the hot zone. But this does seem to imply that Angel contacted Samantha shortly after the explosion and Johnny's death, and knew that he would be there. And then she waited several decades for his body to be delivered to her. What was she waiting for? Is this Alt, and she needed to find a new body, or to build a new body? Why did she wait so long? If this is Alt, this opens up a ton of possibilities for the future of the series. But all of this also paints Johnny as a very, very unreliable narrator, both as Pondsmith and Alt have said. And this is why I think Johnny's memories can be altered by the player. The memories that we experience as Johnny allow for us to make choices. Yes, you could argue that this is just because it's part of the gameplay experience, but I'd argue that them allowing the player several aspects of Johnny's memories to tweak and change means that they are not set in stone to begin with. There are several things in Johnny's memories that we can change, and only a few that are untouchable, meaning Johnny remembers those events as always happening, such as punching Thompson or detonating the bomb himself. And aside from his memories, there's other ways that his unreliable narration is revealed. The first one being his military history. He claims he was in the Second Central American War in Mexico, but in 2003, he was actually in Nicaragua. He also says that his tags belong to a soldier who sacrificed his life to save Johnny's, but the name on the tags is his own, Robert John Linder. Maybe this is an implication that the real Johnny did die, and someone different has replaced him. Maybe he isn't aware that this is his real name because of the engram being corrupted. Or maybe he's implying that a part of him died during the war. In Love Like Fire, which takes place on August 20th, 2023, the dates are also off, as the concert seems to be taking place after Samurai disbanded in 2008. And this seems to happen again with the concert during the night Alt was abducted. But this event took place in 2013, again several years after Samurai disbands. Is his engram damaged and the dates got mixed up, or did these not happen? During the date with Rogue, he tells you that the date was his idea, but Rogue tells you that it was always her idea. It's another reframing of the past, and it's such a tiny detail, but it is important behind his motivations. Does he actually remember the old version of himself being more selfless than he was? Has his guilt over how he treated people changed how he viewed his previous interactions with them? Or is this narcissism, and he really thinks he came up with the idea? And why did Johnny reframe himself as the leader of the op? He specifically says it is his op, but it's actually Morgan Blackhand's. As the true leader of this mission, he surprisingly isn't in any of the scenes from Johnny's memories. Despite being the leader, despite being the one to fight Atom Smasher on the roof, and despite being in the main infiltration team. Did Blackhand remove himself from Johnny's memory? Was the reframing of Johnny's role and replacement of Blackhand intentional? Is there a larger reason why we don't see Blackhand in any of the memories? Is there some ulterior motive behind the removal of Blackhand's identity? Johnny never tells V this, but the Arasaka Tower operation was actually backed by Militech, and they were the ones who hired Johnny and Blackhand with the intent to end the Fourth Corporate War and destroy Soulkiller with 2 bombs. Is this not mentioned because he is ashamed of his mark on the world being backed by corporate money? Or has this very shame caused his memories to forget this small but important detail? Or was Blackhand's involvement here hidden, as his whereabouts and identity are still hidden to this day? And was Militech's involvement hidden or removed from Johnny's memories? Whatever happened, whatever the truth may be, the one truth that we know is that Johnny's memories are inaccurate, and he did die that day. If that same version of him is alive, after Spider-Murphy puts his consciousness on an engram, is up for debate. There's a lot of implications from conversations with Johnny that his engram may have been altered as well.
Okay, basics. If you're jacked in, cruising the net, Arasaka can use Soulkiller, an AI, to trap, fry, and pack away your psyche, your mind, and your soul. Mikoshi felt, I don't know, like sleep? Lacked awareness, had no sense of passing time, didn't mark it, did what they wanted to me. I just remember cold, black void, fear. Or was that your death? People can be bought, brainwashed, but it's only in Mikoshi that you can peer inside a soul, pick it apart, reprogram it. Worse things when they switch up your identity, and you never even know you've become someone else.
If what Johnny says here is true, then whatever soul existed in Johnny's body is dead, and his true soul is on the Soulkiller engram. So, did Arasaka alter or even delete aspects of Johnny's memories? Are they the ones who planted that interrogation scene with Saburo, and what looks like the Soulkiller being applied to Johnny, when none of that actually happened in the first place? He wasn't alive to watch that bomb go off. Or was that just a fabrication based on Johnny thinking Arasaka cared about him more than they actually did? And the conversation with the tech about her dead husband, was this his guilt about the explosion he thinks he played a part in? And will we ever find out why Yorinobu specifically wanted Johnny on that engram? If you play the corporal background, you also get additional dialogue from V that Arasaka uses the tale of Johnny Silverhand as an ominous threat to the new suits, and that the ghost of a man cut in 2 will get them. This leans towards the sourcebook's tale of events being accurate, as he was cut in 2 by Smasher, which is different from Johnny's memories, which have him surviving the confrontation with Smasher. So after all this evidence, that Johnny Silverhand's memories have both been incorrect and fabricated, I think this poses a question. Is this even the real Johnny Silverhand? Jackie tells us that the relic is deteriorating. Johnny's engram was only roughly 80% intact. So is this only 80% of Johnny? Or even less so because the memories and experiences seem different from reality? Or is this even less than 80%? Because Pondsmith said Johnny's memories are scrambled from the damage his body took and the process of recording his engram. Are we experiencing Johnny after severe PTSD, after his horrible experience? Is that why he's lying to himself behind being the reason Alt died? Is this version of events due to being in shock? Is everything we're experiencing a fabrication of his guilty conscience and his inadequacy? Is that why he reframes himself as being more important than Blackhand? Is he reframing himself as being more against the Arasaka Corporation than he actually was? Because this is who he thought he was and not who he actually was. Is this pure narcissism? Did he really die at the start of the memories when he was shot by Smasher? Has everything after that been fabricated? Have these events been so altered because he knows he killed Alt, and reframing it as Arasaka's fault is his way of coping? If the memories we are experiencing are not the truth, and the Johnny that we are meeting doesn't truly remember what happened, and may just be a fraction of who he was, is this the real Johnny? Did the real Johnny die during his engram encryption? Is this just a fraction of who he was? Or is this a different version of him? Has his engram been stuck in its soul killer for so long that his memories have been altered? In Never Fade Away, Soul Killer is called Hell. Maybe this is why his memories are so different and still inconsistent, which is why we can make choices on how Johnny recounts them. Or did Arasaka themselves alter Johnny's engram? Maybe that's why we're now seeing Saburo Arasaka in Johnny's memories. Maybe that's why we see this weird editing in his memories. Or maybe there's something Johnny doesn't want to remember in that gap. This also brings the endings into question. Is the Johnny who takes V's body at the end of the interaction with Alt the real Johnny? Does Johnny's personality being able to be changed because of V's relationship with him mean that his personality isn't set in stone? Or did his relationship with V just truly change who he was? And if Black Dog is about Johnny and Alt, is there a version of Johnny out there with Alt? Does that mean that Johnny wouldn't remember V? And would that make that version of Johnny the real Johnny? Does that mean he would also be different and change from when we see his memories, since he would have lived several years later, since the Black Dog story takes place in 2038? If both Johnnies exist, what does that mean for the future of this series? What does that mean for either Blackwell version of Johnny or V's body Johnny? And if either one of these exist, does that mean there is another Johnny who has been with Alt for the last 30 years? Does Alt put his soul killer engram into his body, or find another host, as it seems like she did for her own? Did she also make him immortal? It's hard to imagine a Johnny, based on the version that we know, laying low with Alt for the last 30 years. I don't know if he's capable of not being loud and disruptive. Maybe after everything that happened with Arasaka, they'd have to remain in hiding, who knows? And that's if Alt even found a way to put his engram in a body. You'd assume that she would have had access with him being in Soul Killer and her having access to the Black Wall. Maybe his body is still on ice all these years later. Maybe V's interactions with Johnny and Alt finally means that Alt, aka Angel, now has access to Johnny's engram, and she's been waiting this whole time. Regardless, all of this reframes V's interactions with Johnny. I've seen some people think that this means Johnny is intentionally lying to V, or that Johnny was created as a way to lure Alt out. And there's a lot of theories around all of this. Personally, I don't think Johnny is lying regarding his memories. Would he even be able to in this state with V? I don't think so. We are seeing actual memories, not brain dances. I think this is his interpretation based on years of replaying the events and years of that being the only thing he was able to do. We're seeing his guilt and anger come through and change his interactions in both how he wished they went and how they wishes they didn't. But even if Johnny isn't lying, Will we ever find out the truth of what happened in the games? And will it confirm the books and the stories that are actually canon? Will Johnny himself ever learn the truth of what happened? And is this Angel? And does she still have Johnny's body? So many mysteries. And is this the real Johnny Silverhand? I have no idea. Is a copy of a person still a person? Is a copy of a person that's slightly different still that same person? And if there's multiple copies of a single person, are they all the same person? I don't think there's a black and white answer to this question. Whatever all this means, this does mean that there is a possibility for Johnny to return, regardless of what ending you choose for V and Johnny. Soulkiller could have made Johnny and Alt immortal, and it seems like the foundation for that to be explored in the future is possible. Makes you wonder if the same could have been said of V. I absolutely love these explorations of transferring souls or bits and pieces of what makes a person an individual through various programs and bodies, like what we're seeing here with Johnny and Alt. I find the possibilities fascinating, and Johnny and Alt are why I've become so obsessed with the cyberpunk world. I do hope we see them again. If not Johnny, at the very least, I'd hope to see Alt again, especially if the Black Wall and its rogue AIs are important in Orion. Which again ask, is this even the real Alt? I can't wait for Orion, but in the meantime, let me know all your theories you'd like me to explore, or pieces of lore you'd like breakdowns on. I plan on covering Cyberpunk as I dive into the world and learn about the lore and theories myself. And this Johnny and Alt theory isn't my theory. I'm obviously very late to the Cyberpunk 2077 fandom, but after watching some videos, I'm obsessed with this theory and its implication. And if you want to watch some other channels that have really good videos on it, I'll make sure to link them below. Let me know all your thoughts about this theory and what it could mean for the future of Cyberpunk and Orion. Thank you for watching, and see you next time, Chooms.